Well, I'm delighted to be here today. My name is Philip Kelvin. I'm a councillor in the City of London. I sit on the board of Innovate Finance, but I actually set up my own fintech company that we exited last year. So I feel like I've got both sides. We sit in this historic building. This crypt is over 700 years old, which is pretty crazy that we're talking about AI in this environment, which is super exciting. I'm joined by a fantastic group of panelists today, and we are very limited in time, as you know from the last session, but I'm delighted to welcome everyone here, Tim, Lewis, Asha, and Linda. And I'm just going to ask them, just to set the context, to say one sentence of who they are and what their company does, and then we're going to crack into a really exciting topic on leadership in the age of AI. Let's work from Linda. I'm going to put you on pressure down that end, and we'll come back this way.
My name's Linda Du. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Moola Money. We're an AI-powered platform empowering the next generation to build wealth.
Hi, I'm Asha Sangray, CEO and founder of Profylr, delivering regulatory compliance underpinned by AI.
Hi, I'm Lewis Liu, co-founder and CEO of IGIT was the last company. Co-founder and CEO of Twin One AI. We create digital AI twins for finance and legal professionals.
Hi, my name is Tim McEwan. I'm a founding partner of Goldcrest Partners, and we develop human potential. So it's leadership development and coaching within the financial services sector.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. We have a second-time founder, probably a third-time founder here as well, which is always helpful to know. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about how AI is changing how leaders make decisions, how they hire, how they work with their boards, and what they see the future of that leadership, that C-suite layer in the age of AI. So what I'm going to start with, and this is a fun thing that I've spent a lot of time with, if I just do a quick kind of show of hands, who's used ChatGPT? Who's used Claude? Who's used Claude Cowork? Less hands. Who's used Claude Code? Okay, so some hands, but it kind of went, you can see that there's a lot at the chat layer, maybe less at the kind of co-work and the code layer. So my first question is to the group, and is maybe we will go to Linda first, actually, which is how important do you think that a CEO, and you've got an early stage startup, actually uses the tools rather than talk about the tools?
I think it's incredibly important because the operating model shifted so much, and especially when you're building an early stage startup, one of the things you have to do is be really efficient with capital. And so one example that I use that I'm not particularly proud of is that we started this year with 8 employees. We're currently at 4. We really didn't want to be the people that kind of learned to use Claude Code and fired everyone, but that's literally what happened. And so we actually went through a graduation of different no coding tools. So we started out with Lovable, got stuck there because we couldn't build our financial algorithm in it. Then we moved to Replit, where we could build our financial algorithm, but the code was really messy. It was spaghetti code. And then we had 2 full-time devs helping us to translate that. But when me and our head of product, who are both financial experts, he's also a product management expert, when we learned to use Claude Code, that was transformative. And so being able to see how much you can do with so few resources and seeing that shift month to month is really essential for a CEO.
And if I come to you, Tim, you might work with maybe more established companies at the other end of the spectrum. How important is it for the CEO who might be in their mid to late stage or the late stage of their career to really get a grip on their weekends, on their evenings, learning how to use Claude Code, for example?
Yeah, I think we've got to be realistic here. You wouldn't have a chief executive of a private equity firm who doesn't know about private equity. Of course they do. But do they need to know everything about AI? No. But what they do need to know is that A, it exists, B, it's going to have a fundamental impact on their business in the future, C, that they have a determination to do something about it, and D, put a plan in place to make it happen. But do they need to be experts? No. They need to appreciate the circumstances and the situation that they find themselves in.
And maybe to you, Lewis, do you think the CEO of the private equity firm can appreciate it if they haven't themselves experimented with it, just to kind of tap into that?
I think one of the most beautiful things about this technology is that you can play with it. You can understand the boundaries. You can actually develop an intuition for this without actually needing C++ or Python. As an example, one of our customers is a large regional bank in the United States. We make digital twins for every employee in the bank. But the first person that actually wanted a digital twin of themselves is actually the CEO himself. He's the number one user. And he doesn't come from a technical background. He's a Wall Street guy by training. And so I actually think one of the most beautiful things about this technology, is the fact that you don't have to be technical and you can actually engage with it on a day-to-day basis, which has a profound impact on how we access technology.
Thank you for that. And Asha, if I kind of come to you on that one as well, and you work with companies in regulated industries and you've got a big background in regulated financial services, do you think there's more hesitancy there in the UK? I mean, Lewis was talking about a financial services company in the US there, but just with your example and thinking about regulated industries and AI, do you think there's more hesitancy there?
I think there's a real openness now to adoption and an inevitability of adopting AI. So I don't think it's hesitancy. It's really about educating. And these people are now on a journey where they understand how they're going to leverage the technology. And I'm going to urge the audience to really understand that risk and compliance is a thing that's going to determine whether your solutions make it to the market or not. So don't ignore it, right? So risk and compliance experts are becoming incredibly savvy, but are incredibly risk averse. And,
if I think you said that like adoption really gets decided in those risk and compliance functions as well, how's the best way to approach that? How do you approach this very risk adverse function and say, look, you are the leaders of this function. AI is going to be transformative. How do you get on the bandwagon as such and enable it within the organization or to customers as well?
Yeah, the language of compliance has existed for decades, right? It's not a new concept. The fact that we're going to overlay artificial intelligence to start automating away or giving us speed to market or managing some of the tasks that we manage today is great. But you've got to remember, we need to stop talking about AI as if it's asking for new layers of wants and needs. They've always been there. So your ability to onboard clients, do the due diligence checks, understand how you're reporting into the regulators, understand the implications of it is there today, right? So you need to demonstrate you can do that.
And Linda, just kind of tapping into your use of Claude Code to experiment, to create new features. You're creating a business in financial services. It's consumer focused as well, which has a higher regulatory burden. Do you ever you've now hired 2 devs. Is that because of a worry that, I create this thing on Claude Code, I create a replicate cursor, whatever it is, but I really hope it's secure and I really hope that I haven't done anything accidental. Do you still think there's that necessary development at security and infrastructure layer, especially in what you're doing?
The 2 areas that we are concerned about, so we've actually hired CTO, fractional CTO expert who can advise on data architecture, because Claude's great at writing individual lines of code, it's great at writing features, but in terms of having like a really efficient tech stack, it's less good at that for now. And then the other part is, as you mentioned, cybersecurity. So we are doing, we've just started experimenting with open banking features, and we are getting a full cybersecurity audit, including penetration testing, to make sure that's bulletproof, because the minute that people are putting their actual financial data in, then you have an accountability to your customer.
And I guess that's one of the things we've been seeing. Anyone might have read the AI Security Institute's report recently on Mythos, the latest model from Anthropic, the kind of getting the 0-day bugs, etc. Do you see, when you talk to leaders, Tim, that security from AI, the cybersecurity threat, and how people are thinking about defending their companies is now becoming much kind of further up the topic list now that nefarious agents, etc., may be being used rather than just a group of Russians somewhere? Am I allowed to say that? I'm not sure. I think so.
Yeah. I think what you're seeing is that the sort of conversations that are taking place at leadership teams, which includes sort of the risks and security and what have you, is changing because the environment is changing. And so there's no doubt that executive teams are talking about stuff that they were just probably didn't even think was going to be on their radar 5 years ago. So yes, I suspect they are probably hugely concerned about this. And I know they're talking about it a great deal.
And one of the reactions to this has been, and it's maybe a British attitude. I've written a bit about this, about how, our kind of desire is, okay, well, let's put a law and try and regulate this kind of train that's kind of coming towards us. Lewis, do you think that we should be regulating AI? There's lots of attempts in the US, AI Safety Act as well, and various other things. What's your view on that?
I think that in the US at least, we're sleepwalking into a disaster from a regulatory perspective, right? I mean, look, on one hand, I think people are just ignoring the EU AI Act now, bluntly, right? So I think that's one end of extreme. But I think The Atlantic recently just posted this really interesting survey that basically said that, the Singaporeans are the Singaporean people trust their government to regulate AI the most, and the Americans, because of the oligarchy regulatory capture, actually Americans trust their government the least to regulate AI. So I actually think there is probably, and let me give a very explicit example. So the Singaporean Central Bank, what they've done is they've looked at every job and every task associated with that job, and then looked at, under different AI scenarios, how those jobs would change, evolve, or disappear. And then they looked at, okay, look, what do we need to do to change, our economy, or change UBI, as an example, universal basic income, for our economy, because Singapore is such a white-collar driven world. And I think those kind of questions need to happen, right? And I don't think they're happening holistically in Singapore. They're happening holistically in China, if you look at the latest 5-year plan. I think in Europe, we're starting to have those conversations. It's completely absent in the US.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. And if anyone wants some homework, there's a great paper called Building Pro-Worker AI by leading MIT economist called Darren, I can't pronounce his surname, but just Google that, about which types of roles will be here or won't be here, especially if we face this deflationary environment. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about job losses, which people are talking about, and could be a real impact to the UK. How do leaders think about that? So Linda went from 8 to 4. Now, obviously, if you're 10,000 going to 5,000, that's an equally painful, every sort of job losses are a painful experience for leaders and their employees and their former employees to go through. But how are leaders approaching this, thinking, okay, we can be more productive, our board want us to be more productive, but actually there might be less people. What are the kind of conversations you're having, Tim?
Now this is a really interesting one, and the adoption of AI and AI tools is not, in my opinion, an excuse just to have an opportunity to cut heads. It might result in some heads being cut, but it gives you an opportunity to look at your business model again and ask yourself, what are the skills that we need from our employees, and how do we get the best out of the people that are either left, or the opportunity to bring in new people that are more aligned with what it is that we need to do. Their skills are more aligned. Maybe their mindset is more attuned to this sort of world. They're up for change. They're up for challenge. They're up for doing things differently. And so I think I would argue it's lazy thinking just to go, AI, great, it's an opportunity to get rid of heads. It's actually an opportunity to revisit how we lead our businesses and how we deliver what it is that we deliver to our customers and clients.
Thank you. And Linda, kind of going off kind of your example, but then as you look forward, we've kind of gone through many different ways in the startup universe, where first it was like you ask someone, how's your company going? And say, we're 100 people. As like that's the badge of honor, not revenue. Then it became profitability. As you think now about org design, you're at this great opportunity where you can set the design of your company as it scales. Everyone has different models, whether that's Tesla, Facebook, Apple, etc. We seem to be moving away from functional type roles when you can do so much. How are you thinking differently? If you were 40 people, how do you think about that? Do you think about that?
The expectations have changed massively, even within the funding landscape as we're speaking to investors. So it used to be they would go on LinkedIn and use employee growth rate as a proxy for organizational success. We've seen in a couple of news articles in the past couple of weeks, I think there's this one startup with 2 people that has reached insane revenues, and similar thing for, I think, a 3-person startup that hit 300K ARR in 3 months. And so actually VCs are also the bar is changing, right? So you used to go to a VC to raise a pre-seed to launch an MVP. Now you have to bring an MVP to the meeting, and they're asking already about traction and revenues. But how you get there matters less. And actually, if you prove that you can be lean and are using these tools, I'm looking into building agents to help us with sales efficiency. And so if I'm able to kind of bring the language and say, hey, we're doing a GCP VM rather than an Apple Mac Mini, people are kind of impressed by that, and they see like, okay, you are actually creating agents that are doing the role of employees.
So you're buying up all the Mac Minis so no one else here can get them, maybe.
No, we're doing the VMs.
We're doing the VMs. Okay, fine, great. So look, as we wrap up, kind of one question for all of you, thinking about leadership, typically we have a CEO, CFO, COO, CPO, CTO, all these, C-suites. Do you think, in 5 years' time, the top layer of leadership will be incredibly simplified? And in that, who doesn't exist, or what new roles do exist?
Well, I'll start. I think as long as there are humans in this room at the IFGS conference in 5 years' time, there will be a leadership team. That's the first thing. The second team is that leadership team will need to be much more AI-enabled, savvy, speak that language, but it does not replace the need for leaders to provide clarity of vision, to develop human-related trust, and ultimately take accountability for their decisions.
Thank you. We'll carry on going down. Lewis.
I think as we move forward, one of the things that's going to change is the ability for us to communicate. What I mean by this is today we communicate manually via text or calls or video chats or whatever. I think something that at least we're building towards in the future is AI-mediated communications. 20-30% of your communication should be done by AI, could be done by AI. I think once you have that, the level of transparency and coordination that AI is going to be able to enable, I think will fundamentally change just how many fewer layers of management you're going to need in the future.
Asha.
Yeah, I agree with that, absolutely. I think what we're going to see is that the monolithic, federated operating models that we see today will collapse. We'll see the distance between operations and the board narrow in. We'll see a much more educated, concentrated set of individuals running firms, and there'll always be a space for it. And our exec leaders are going to focus on speed to market.
You articulated better than I can. Thank you.
Linda?
There are only 3 roles that matter, and that's true of companies today, and that's can you build, can you sell, and can you tell the story. And I think now everyone's kind of drilling into that last part. CEOs have always been doing it, but it's what is your vision of the future, and how can you prove to people that you're the company that's going to get us there?
That was an excellent way to wrap up. Thank you, everyone here. Sorry we can't take questions. This was Leadership in the Age of AI. I think we've got an exciting 3, 5, 10, 20 years ahead of us, and hopefully everyone will still be coming to IFGS then. So thank you very much, and everyone, if you can thank the panel with a round of applause, it would be great.